All right, we're going to go into our second video in the power autonomy segment, the third biosphere rule we're looking at. And now we're going to talk about how power autonomy will translate to business, right? So when you look at a cactus, again, I want to reinstate this, is that energy capture or generation, storage, and use are held within the structure of the organism, right? So that provides a certain amount of autonomy to the plant. Now, I want to point out right away that power autonomy really is sort of an ideal. It's something to strive for, kind of like there's a political way of thinking around energy independence for a country, right? It's, at some point, at some level, we never can absolutely probably reach ultimate power autonomy, but it's a goal to drive for. It's an ideal that we can move our organizations closer to, and as we do that, we begin to then mimic and implement the rules that work in the biosphere in our own business, commerce, and industrial world. So energy use in the biosphere is about metabolism, that's just living, that's the energy generation and use in your cells so that you keep an organism alive. It's used for growth, and then it's also used for procreation. And we can begin then to map this over. Well, what are sort of the analogous kind of ideas in business or in our material world, right, or in the human technical world? And if we look at it, there are really sort of three elements you need to focus on in terms of power autonomy. The first is energy generation, and that is both the source of the energy and the efficiency of its generation, right? And we've talked about the bulk of our energy use comes from fossil fuels. We generate our energy from fossil fuels. We need to shift towards renewables, which we talked about last time. Next is efficiency. It's how well you and how effectively and efficiently you use that energy to achieve your goals. And then the third element is storage. And these three pieces are intimately connected. They are interlinked in important ways that we can begin to elucidate. So for example, there is a relationship between energy generation and energy efficiency, and that is they are inversely related. They move in opposite directions. So if you are very energy wasteful, you don't use your energy, you need a lot of energy because you're very wasteful, you need a lot of generation. But if you drive up your energy efficiency, you drive down the amount of generation you need. You can then reduce the size of the power plant. You can reduce the number of energy generation facilities. And so there's this inverse relationship that's really important, and that's why efficiency is so important. As we drive our products, our production processes, our manufacturing facilities to ever greater efficiency, we need we need to generate less and less power. And that guides us in the direction of power autonomy. You can see how this plays out over time. So assume that this is your company, and today it's operating on 100% fossil fuels. Right? So one of the first things you want to do then is begin investing in energy efficiency. You want to increase the energy efficiency of your manufacturing processes, of your facilities, etc. When you do that, you drive down your total power demand. You need less energy. Right? Now, at the same time, if you begin investing or transitioning over to renewable energy generation, and you drive up the amount of renewable power, then you are driving towards this X point, and that crossover point in the middle is the power autonomy convergence point. Once the amount of energy you need equals the amount of renewable energy you're generating, you've now created a power autonomous facility, a power autonomous production process, or a power autonomous product. And you can measure that progress by the power autonomy factor, which is just sort of the percentage of renewable energy over the total energy demand. And the idea there is to drive down the Y, reduce your total energy demand, and increase or balance that out with increasing renewable energy generation. So that's the process. It's really, and you can map that out and aim towards getting to that point where you are then now fundamentally a power autonomous. You're not dependent on plugging into some coal-fired power plant hundreds away and depending on a massive distribution grid to get that electricity or that energy to your facility plant. Or you're not tethered to some oil well in North Dakota or in Canada that's leading to massive disruption of ecosystems. You are now relying on renewable energy and you are mimicking the biosphere. All right, storage is similar. Storage is also intimately related to these other other elements. For example, generation. If you have instant on generation, you can turn it on and turn it up and down sort of as you need, with complete variability. You don't need any storage. But as most people know, renewable energy, solar and wind, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, and so the energy generation is not constant. So you can try to deal with that with generation strategies by diversifying your energy sources, or you'll need some storage, right? And so that's where we're moving towards. Now, efficiency again is really important, because if you're wasteful, you need lots of storage. If you're throwing away a lot of the energy, but if you're incredibly efficient, you need a much smaller storage battery or storage facility, right? So these things are all interlinked, and you can begin then to use these as design criteria. Design your products, your manufacturing processes, your facility, as if there is not an infinite consequence-free source of fossil fuels out there. You begin taking these things into account, and it's really amazing. Once engineers and designers are given this design as if these things are true, you'll begin to see in some of the examples I'll provide some of the amazing things that can be done. I mean, right now we're designing as if we have as much energy as we want, and it's largely consequence-free. And if you do that, then you make a muscle car, right? Or you have an uninsulated building. But once you begin to design with these criteria in mind, you actually then come up with much more elegant, much more effective designs that lead us towards this goal of power autonomy. And we're already seeing examples of this. This is not some kind of pipe dream. When I wrote this book about a decade ago, there weren't the types of examples that we have now. We've made real strides since the first time I wrote about the Biosphere Rules and did the original research. Okay. Now, another thing we need to know about power autonomy is that it's fractally distributed, right? And so energy systems are a lot like Russian dolls. There are systems within systems, right? So this computer here that you're looking at this video on, it's a energy system in itself. It is an individual system. Now, of course, for it to work, it has to be connected to a larger energy system like that of an office or a home, right? And that's just the nature of energy systems. And we can talk about power autonomy at different levels of the system, all right? So you can see in the dolls, at the smallest scale, you might have a product, and then you could, go out to a product system or a manufacturing process or something like that. So at the largest scale here on planet Earth, the Earth is an energy system, right? And again, we are all of the biosphere's activity and all of the human sort of technical or industrial activity is dependent on this same renewable energy source, the sun, right? You can begin then though down to scale down and look at, say, think of a power autonomous city, which another number of governments and regions are already talking about, thinking about power autonomy, generating all the energy we need for our region or our facility, right? There are examples of this already being developed or in some instances, entire regions that go for extended period of times solely on renewable energy, right? So they are power autonomous in that sense. You can then zoom in again and look at, say, a power autonomous office building or a power autonomous manufacturing facility where the building design has power, energy capture, storage, use, and efficiency built into the structure itself. So we can begin to think of, say, a power autonomous manufacturing plant. Here's an example of a relatively power autonomous research facility. This is the space station with solar energy panels that generates quite a large percent of the energy that's needed to operate the space station. This is an example of a power autonomous manufacturing facility from 18th century Netherlands, right? In Holland, you had power autonomous milling that ran on renewable energy. And then you could even zoom down to a smaller unit, a power autonomous house or a power autonomous, say, bank a bank office or something like that. And then all the way down to the bottom to actually having power autonomous products. Right, so you have to think of energy systems in this self-similar fractal systems within systems perspective, so that you can begin to understand and begin to see the interlinkages between those different systems. And it also can begin to think of designing power autonomy, energy efficiency, power storage, etc., at different scales, where it makes sense for these different scales. So we're going to be talking about in our future videos here in this Power Autonomy series, mostly about thinking about power autonomy at the manufacturing facility level or the power plant, or even the office if it's a service industry or something like that, the facility in which we operate, thinking of power autonomy at that level. Thinking about power autonomy of production processes, and this is really important when we think about closed loop or circular economy. We need to have production processes that can transform our recovered materials in efficient ways so that we can operate them on renewable energy. And then ultimately, products themselves, the products that our customers use that during the use phase, they can actually approach or begin to consider and think about being power autonomous themselves. So we'll talk about these three different levels of power autonomy in our coming video. So I look forward to you in the next segment.